EVP, Elite Non-Stimulant Pre-Workout Solution for maximum size, pump, and intensity. Only Evogen Nutrition. Glycogen, Elite Pre- and Post-Workout Carbohydrate Loading Solution for maximum endurance, pump, and glycogen transport. Only Evogen Nutrition.
Welcome to the first installment of the Chronicles of Compton, brought to you by Evogen Nutrition. Visit evogennutrition.com. I'm Dave Palumbo, and tonight we have the IFBB Golden State Pro and Arnold Asia Pro Champion, Justin Compton. Welcome. I don't know if did we lose him there, Johnny? There he is.
Oh, can you hear me?
We can. Congratulations on the win.
Thank you.
2 wins. You're kind of like an enigma, Justin, in this industry because you're kind of very quiet. You keep to yourself. You don't do a lot of interviews. You kind of just let your physique do the talking. My question for you is, usually you only hit a couple shows a year. This year you did the Arnold. You did the Arnold Australia. You kind of shut it down, and then you turned it back on this year and did 2 more shows before heading into the Olympia. Give us a little idea of what went on in 2016 in the life of Justin Compton.
My prep for the Arnolds back in the spring didn't go exactly the way that I would hope for them to. Nothing really. I mean, just one of those things that, shit happens. Like, I moved right in the beginning of the prep. So I moved from Kentucky to Florida, kind of changed environments. I ended up getting sick 3 times during the prep. I mean, once was pretty bad. So I lost a lot of weight really fast. And I had a little bit of a minor injury / setback. So it's one of those preps that it's like a Murphy's Law. If it could go wrong, it did. So, scratch it off and take it as a learning lesson and go on. I had 10 points from 4th in Columbus and 3rd in Australia. So, I started looking at the shows. Like, I didn't have any other intentions on doing another contest prior to the Olympia because I had it in my head that I was going to do the Olympia this year. I was just going to go ahead and shut down till then. But I started looking at the shows and the guys that were coming up, and I'm like, man, if I don't do something, a couple of these guys are going to bump me off the point system. So I went ahead, I stayed in shape throughout the whole year. I felt like it was probably my best offseason ever in terms of, just overall size and conditioning. So I decided at 5 weeks out from the Golden State, I was just going to hop in the show. So pretty much I pulled a 5-week prep. And since it was back-to-back with Asia, I figured why not, since I'm in Florida, I'm going to fly over to the West Coast, so I'll hit Sacramento, and then I can catch a direct flight into Hong Kong, and it worked out great for me.
Yeah, it was a good strategy when you think about it. A lot of people, obviously everyone's got an opinion in this industry. A lot of people gave you a lot of flack for skipping the Olympia your first 2 years that you qualified. Obviously, you won the Orlando Pro in 2014. We'll talk about that in a minute. That qualified you for that Olympia. Skipped it. You obviously would have gone to the Olympia last year had you wanted to. You skipped that. What was the reasoning for not doing the Olympia, which is kind of the Super Bowl of bodybuilding?
I set it out both years because I felt like I want to be a contender in any show that I enter. Like, I don't want to be the guy that's like, when you go to national level shows, just because someone qualifies for nationals, when you see them up there, you're like, man, this guy does not belong here. I don't want to be, like last call out at the Olympia or whatever call out I would be. So I wanted to make sure that when I go that I feel like I can stand up there with the top guys. So I felt like I needed the extra time to mature my physique and grow a little bit more and just get a little bit harder and denser.
Now, back in 2014, when you won the Orlando, that was your pro debut. And I remember when you won nationals, in that heavyweight class, a lot of people would say, this guy's got tremendous potential. You took your time. You picked your first pro show very wisely. You showed up in Orlando, and you just blew the doors off everyone who was there. And you really impressed, at least me, and I know Chris Aceto and all the other people who were sitting in that press pit, with tremendous conditioning, grainy hardness. I mean, it was your best look ever, I thought, and you put on a tremendous amount of muscle from that Nationals win. Was there anything special you did for that show? Because you looked that was like, I feel like that was like you hit it perfectly on the nail for that show.
Actually, that actually was not my pro debut. My pro debut was 2013 Chicago Wings of Strength. I finished 5th there. But right after that, I started doing my own thing. Like I started prepping myself. I kind of wanted to venture off and see what I could do on my own, just through some of the stuff that I've learned, some of the stuff that, trial and error over the years. And I felt like it helped me out a lot. And I felt like that's why my body, I did better, because I didn't have any stress. I didn't really have anybody to report to other than myself. So it's like if I screwed something up, I was letting myself down on it. So, I was my own coach, so I was still accountable for my actions. And, I made sure that every day counted. So like moving forward into it, I got fifth in Chicago, which, I really, I was happy to make top 5, but I wanted to be better than that. And I felt like I had the capacity for it. So I said everything I had. I was originally going to do the Arnold Brazil in 2014, and I didn't get the invite that year. So I started prepping for it, and it was like 5 or maybe 6 weeks out or something like that. And the list came out, and I was like, "Oh, yeah." I was a little bit bummed I didn't get the invite. Which, at the time, who was I? I was nobody. So why would they invite me there? And I was like, well, I'm just going to hop in the Orlando Pro. So it kind of sped my prep up by 2 or 3 extra weeks, which it worked out to my advantage because I won the show.
You certainly did. Shame on me for forgetting that Chicago Pro. Maybe it was because it was forgettable, because we've seen so much from you so quickly at such a young age. What do you think what's your theory as to why your body responded so well, once you turned and got that pro card, and you made explosive gains, which a lot of guys just can't seem to do these days?
It really responded any differently than it had in the past, because if you look at my history, from basically 2010, which is when I competed as a light heavyweight at I think it was the Mr. Kentucky or the Kentucky Muscle. And if you look at my progression, it's been a steady 10 to 12 pounds per year since then. It was just people kind of overlooked the Chicago. They didn't really pay too much attention to that. So they looked at the pictures from nationals. So basically they skipped a year. So all they saw was a 20-pound gain. So, over the course of 2 years, it was about 20 pounds.
I got you. Now, did you get a lot of people contacting you when you decided to skip the Olympia in 14 and 15, like trying to convince you to do it?
Oh, yeah. Everyone told me I was making a mistake. But, in my heart, I still feel like I did the right thing.
It's hard sometimes to go with your gut and what your internal mechanism of whatever gives you advice is telling you to do, especially in a sport that's so subjective. Did you worry about maybe there would be ramifications, that people would be upset that you didn't do the Olympia, or that you disrespected the Olympia in some way, which is kind of ridiculous in a way?
I thought about that. I knew there would be some upset fans, but, the fans they're not the one that's actually putting in the work, and sometimes they don't understand what actually goes into it. So most of the time when I can actually sit down one-on-one and explain my strategy to people, they're like, oh, wow, that clicks. I understand. I get it now. They just assume that when a person qualifies for the Olympia, they have to do it. So I try to explain it to everybody the best I can. So, I'm constantly repeating myself. Hopefully, after this year, I won't ever have to go through that, considering I'm not planning on ever sitting it out again.
Right. Let's talk about last year, 2015 Arnold Classic. After coming off that Orlando win the year before, people were predicting, victory for you. I was predicting victory. I was probably one of your biggest advocates. And you came in and you brought a look that was not as good, at least in my estimation, as we saw in Orlando. You were bigger, yes, but not sharper. What happened for that show?
I don't know. I guess you would just say I simply overcarbed for Columbus. Because if you look at the pictures for Australia, which was, I think, 1 week later,
right,
I showed up about 5 pounds lighter, and I was a lot sharper. And I feel like the 2015 Australia was better than the 2014 Orlando. But again, most people kind of overlooked that show, and they just looked at the big picture, which was Columbus.
Yeah, I agree. And Chris Aceto was actually there, and he told me you did look really, really good at the Australia. But it seems like sometimes when you go from Arnold to Arnold, they kind of stick with the placings from the week before. And,
yeah, the other guys look just as great, too. So, it's not like I literally it's not like I pulled 30% ahead of anybody. I just fixed the error that, should have been fixed the week before.
When you say you overcarbed, give me an idea of how many grams and how much you were eating for the couple days leading up to the show.
I wouldn't necessarily say that it was overcarb. So my body tends to, I store quite a bit of glycogen. So I need to start carbing up typically on a Saturday show. I would start pushing the food. Like when I look good in Orlando, and like when I look good in these past two shows, I started pushing the food on Monday and Tuesday to fill up by Saturday. So in 2015, I thought for some reason it would be a good idea to kind of deplete. So I started backing my carbs off Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. So come Thursday, I'm really flat, and I was trying to push, over 1,000 grams a day.
Wow.
And I wasn't sticking to my guns on my regular carb sources either. So, everybody has foods that cooperate with them and foods that don't cooperate with them. And I kind of drifted off, off the path of what I should have been doing, because I know what works for me and what don't. And I tried a few new methods and some different foods, and I wasn't sticking to my guns on what I knew.
What works for you and what doesn't?
Honestly, probably cream of rice. I can just eat eat it by the boxes, and it doesn't bother me. But for the most part, cream of rice and beef. That's the two sources that I'm eating all day long. Oatmeal does really well, but I have to be a little cautious with it, because when I get too heavy on it, it kind of bloats my stomach. I don't hardly do any potatoes, not anymore. It's mostly rice, and then like the night before the show, I'll kind of do a little bit of a junk load, so to say. I'll just have a cheat meal, which whether it's burger and fries or just kind of depends on what the hotel has.
Right. Now, some people criticized your abdominal definition, I guess you could say, at the Arnold in 15 and actually a little bit this year too. Is that food related, you think, where you kind of get that little bit of a water blur going on there? Because it doesn't happen on the rest of your body.
It's both. I mean, I was holding a little bit of water, subcutaneously, but a lot of it's food, because, I was having a lot of digestive issues. So if you think about it, if you got all this food sitting inside your stomach, it's pushing against your abdominal wall. So it's going to eventually blur out the lines between the abs.
So you somehow rectified that for these shows that you just got done doing in Asia and in the Golden State. What changed from the prep earlier this year at the Arnold to the prep now?
I really didn't do near as much cardio, and I just simply ate a lot less food.
Interesting.
And that was one of the biggest things. I mean, my carb load this year, I was hanging around 650, maybe 700 grams, versus trying to push up to 1,000, 1,200. So about half.
Do you think, experimentally speaking, that maybe you figured out that eating too much food is not a good look for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's like I was trying to come in like super full, and it was backfired on me.
Gotcha.
I was focusing on the scale, so like as the scale was kind of dipping down, I was trying to compensate by pushing more food in, and that's not what I needed to be doing. Right.
You need to back the cardio. Well, sometimes we think that the more we do, the more shredded we're going to be, and sometimes you just simply don't need to do that much exercise. You got to rest sometimes. Give me an idea. You mentioned in 2014 you did your own diet. I understand you were being helped this year, and then you got. Have you changed who was working with you, or did you start taking over your own diet again?
For the 2015 the 2016 Columbus Arnold, Matt Jansen was helping me. Okay. But after that, I did my own for Australia, and I did my own for these shows as well.
What happened? Did you find that you work better alone?
I am so much better by myself, because when I wake up in the morning, this is like no discredit to any coach at all, but I feel like I'm probably going to just stay doing things myself. I'm one of those, probably, I guess you say, like a genetic outlier whose body will change really fast. Like some people, I remember hearing you tell people that they don't need to make dietary changes on the daily. For most people, they don't. I feel like a change once every 3 to 5 days is going to be plenty for them. Right. But I'm one of those people that if sometimes, like if I start sinking down really fast, I'll have to pick the food up the next day, or sometimes I'll pull it a little bit more. And being as I know my body, I wake up every morning. I have 2 or 3 mirrors set up in the extra room in my house. So I go through my posing. I see where my weight's at. I look at see what kind of look I've got in the mirror, and about how I feel. And then from there, I decide this is how much food I was eating yesterday. This is how much I need to be doing today. Like I've got a chart on my computer. I don't use the fit your macros bullshit or anything like that. So I just, I stick to the same foods, and they either go up or down for the most part. Now, when I do days that, like, if I need to do 700 grams of carbs, I will slide a few extra things in there to make it a little bit easier processing for me. But on a normal day, it's, the same sources.
Gotcha. Now, people would say to you, Justin, you did your own diet in 14. You looked amazing. Why would you even look to get a coach at that point, given the fact that you've had terrific results on your own?
I don't know. It's one of those things I feel like, and I kind of feel like everybody should have a coach at some point because, I was trying to expand my knowledge and I wanted to see if there was something. It's like, if I can look this good on my own, can somebody else make me better? That's kind of what I was really exploring.
When you look in the mirror at this point, are you happy with what you see, or do you think you need to make a lot of improvements?
No, I mean, as a bodybuilder, I don't think, I'm ever going to be happy with what I got. Even though I just came off 2 wins, I'm still not happy with where I'm at and how I look. So I'm going to try to sharpen up a lot more for the Olympia, and then we'll see what happens from there before I make any decisions on anything else.
Now, I'm glad you brought that up because I was just going to say that this might be your best look ever that we saw from you in Golden State and at the Arnold Asia. I think this is a very competitive look for the Olympia.
Yeah, I don't think I'm really far off the mark, but I still think there's room for improvement.
What would you like to see improved? Because I don't know if there is any improvement necessary. A little sharper, maybe?
Well, this is one of the things that the downside to being my own coach. Like, I travel, I do my own diet, I do my own training. I typically train alone. I train in a gym that's usually just me in the gym for the most part. Like I said, I travel, I get on the plane, I go to the hotel, I Uber around, I do everything by myself. So that's all fine and dandy. But, when you're in the hotel room and you're posing, you're going over things, sometimes the extra eye or just having somebody take pictures for you can help. So, I was looking at myself and I was checking the scale, and I actually dropped down about probably 4 or 5 pounds more than what I should have for both of these 2 shows. So what you saw on stage, I'm happy with it, but what you didn't see the night before was a better version.
Interesting. Okay. What did you weigh the night before?
About 259, 260.
Wow. Okay, that's a lot of muscle. Now
I was on 254, 255 on stage.
A lot of people, I was talking to Hani Rambad last night, and a lot of people think that, because you work for Evogen, that Hani does your diet, and that's why it was important. I think that Hani actually told me he likes that you do your own diet. It's less stress on him. How did you guys hook up in terms of sponsorship with Evogen?
He reached out to me in 2014. I ran into him at Masters Nationals. I hadn't seen him in a long time, and that's when my contract had, I just parted ways with Gear. And, the cards kind of aligned for us. We got on the phone, we talked a deal, and we worked things out. And, we kind of entered into a business relationship, and it's been great since. I mean, he's actually never done my diet. He's offered, like, if I've ever needed anything, like any questions, or if I second guess myself, or if I want him to take a look at pictures or anything, he's always been there, to offer a helping hand. But again, I'm one of those, I'm a little bit stubborn. Like, I kind of like to do things my way. So to have somebody tell me what to do is, again, I'm one of those people. It's like my way or no way. So I like to do my own thing.
Right. Well, it's working. So I think you should keep doing it. Matter of fact, when I was at the Arnold this year, I said to Hani, Hani, how does Justin look? He's like, I don't know. He won't show me what he looks like. I said, he's probably better off that way. What? I think sometimes when you isolate yourself, it's kind of like puts you in kind of a meditative state. It blocks out all the outside distractions.
It does. I typically, like, my last week of the show, I'll turn my phone, just turn it down, and just sit back and watch TV. Like, I don't get on the boards. I try not to read any social media. I don't want anybody getting in my head, because I especially don't want to see my competition. I don't want to see my fellow competitors' pictures. I don't want anything to mess with me, because it's just a battle of me versus me at that point.
Do you think going into the Olympia now with the 2 wins under your belt that you have a nice amount of momentum? And do you feel that you could break into that top 6 this year?
I definitely think I can. I feel very comfortable in saying that. As long as I can come in a little sharper, like I intend to, I think the 5th and 6th place spot is kind of up for grabs. And it's going to be a matter of who shows up, between me and 3 or 4 other guys. It's going to be a matter of who shows up the best on that day.
Justin, with the introduction of social media over the last couple of years being so important with marketing and people becoming popular and all the arguments that go on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, how do you find yourself not getting sucked into that? Because it's kind of like in one sense, it's a necessary evil to promote yourself. In another sense, it's kind of could be a negative distraction.
Honestly, the block button. The block button. Like, I just don't like, I'm here to, I'll promote myself, promote product, and I'm here to help people. I want to educate people. I'll show my training, I'll show my nutrition. But, when people come on there and you're just going to just blatantly talk shit or talk smack or disrespectful, it's one thing to criticize or give me, negative criticism like, hey, Justin, you need to fix this, you need to fix that. But if you come on and you just disrespect, I don't acknowledge it. Like, I just block you and go on. Because I don't really, what's the point? Like, if I argue with this guy, just go back and forth. And, obviously the guy's not even a fan anyway. So to me, I haven't really lost anything.
Do you get, do you take things personally? Does it emotionally hurt you when you hear people criticize your physique? Because I know we work so hard as bodybuilders to be the best we can be on stage. And, when you're winning, everyone's on your side. And then it seems like you don't do well one show and everyone's like against you. Is that negatively affecting you?
It can be initially, yeah. I think when I first started coming into the sport, because when I first turned pro, that's probably when social media first started hitting really hard, 2012 or 13. And I do think that, when you start getting negative feedback, especially from a young guy, it can mess with you mentally. But, the longer you're in this, it's like the colder your heart gets and it just doesn't bother you anymore.
Given the fact that you're such a regimented guy, with a certain schedule and you eat right and you train on a certain schedule, when you have to go to a show like in Hong Kong, which is, a crazy long flight, especially, from coming from Florida, how do you prepare for that mentally? Because I know that I know you're the kind of guy that doesn't like his schedule screwed up.
Yes, I'm very OCD about the schedule. So, like, I'll eat, like, when I'm at home and I'm in my comfort zone, my food, my training, everything is at the same time every day. Like, I'm on point. So when I did the SAC show, I knew Hong Kong. I figured it was going to be a disaster with the whole plane and everything. Turns out it wasn't that bad because it was like the one time ever I actually had flights that was on time. I couldn't believe it. And also I slept on the plane. I couldn't believe that either. But, being as there is a big time change. So when I got over there, it was like supposed to be 6 p.m. at night. And it was actually 6 a.m. the next day.
Right.
So pretty much I just ate my meals accordingly on the plane. When I got there, I just kind of fasted for like, 6 to 8 hours as if I was asleep, but I actually stayed awake. So I just I tried not to think about it because I knew if I thought about it, I would start getting stressed and, cortisol going up. So I just said, screw it. I'll eat as I need to, as I feel hungry. And then once I actually fell asleep that night, I just kind of got into the regimen the next day.
Coming back, I know you had a long, crazy ordeal. You said it took 30 hours to get home. How do you get back to normal after that? Luckily, the Olympia is still 3.5 weeks away. But how do you kind of get yourself back to normal? Do you allow yourself to have a couple cheat meals, or is it right back to the grind? Did we lose him, Johnny? All right, we're going to try to get Justin back. The point I'm trying to make here is, bodybuilders have to be flexible and adaptable because if you get all crazy about having a flight that's delayed, the best story I can give you is I was in an airport with Ronnie Coleman once when he was competing, and he got stuck. He got stuck on a 6 or 8 hour, delay. And we just happened to be in the lounge at the same time. We were going to, different places. But I said, Ronnie, you look so relaxed. How could you not get stressed out? You got a show in a couple days, Didn't bother him. He's like, nothing but a peanut. Don't bother me. Got my food, and he got his phone, and he's got his computer, and nothing bothers him. I was bothered, and I wasn't even competing. So you got to have that nothing bothers you personality. Kai Green used to have that when he would compete. He would kind of shut his phones off. If his phone got turned off because he didn't pay the bill, it didn't matter. Ronnie was always... Kevin Levrone like that too. Nothing bothered Kevin Levrone before a show. It's like he shut out the outside world, and it's an important component of competing because if you allow everyday stress in life to sneak up on you, ultimately it's going to sabotage how you look. I know a lot of guys that are super neurotic and everything bothers them. And those are the guys that consistently are not in shape at every single show. One show they look great, one show they're off, depending on if they're in a fight with their girlfriend, or if their pet died, or if they had a move, or they got stuck on a delay someplace. You can't allow the outside world to interrupt you. And that's why it's hard if you have a family and you're competing. It's a tough thing to do. When I was competing, I didn't have a kid, or I didn't have family responsibilities. I kind of just focused on the sport of bodybuilding, and I think that's where Justin is right now, and I think that's going to make him a very dangerous competitor going into the Olympia because of his focus, his OCD nature, and his ability to be the best that he can be on stage and not have any interruptions. Johnny, were you get him back yet?
Yeah, I just now came back on.
Okay, there we go. Yeah, Justin, I was just talking about how important it is to block out the outside world, focus on the goal at hand, and if you allow outside interferences to disturb your prep, okay, it's gonna screw up the ultimate outcome. And you seem to have been able to block out that outside world so well and make the improvements year after year after year.
I mean, I block it out as much as I can, but at the end of the day, I'm still human. I still have the problems that everyday people have, just going through life. So I mean, I deal with my struggles just like everybody else. I just try not to. I'm not one of those people that shares it on Facebook or talks about their problems all the time or spilling them out. I just keep it to myself and I just handle it because that's all you can really do with it.
That what? Oh shit! I hope I can make enough money to pay my bills. Because bodybuilding is an expensive sport. And sometimes you lose contracts, you get contracts. I mean, it's kind of one of these things that kind of you don't have a lot of control over.
Yeah, correct. And you're right. That is something that was always passing through my mind. I mean, an injury. You could be in a car wreck or anything. You could blow your knee, blow your back, and from a supplement company standpoint, I wouldn't pay a guy who can't produce. It's just how it goes. I mean, if I was the IFBB, I'm not going to pay an athlete or for somebody that's injured or out of the game. So I realize the rug can pull right up under your feet really quickly. So, that being said, I did go to school. I do have a background. I have an engineering degree. I also did taxes for 3 or 4 years while I was in school, and I was also a loan officer right after I graduated.
Oh, wow.
So I feel like if bodybuilding were to shut down for me for whatever reason, that I always have a financial fallback.
That's a good thing to have, and it never hurts to have a little backup help. Well, I will say one thing for you. I think that you're going to be probably one of the most dangerous guys who are competing in the Olympia for their very first time. Usually when guys come in, for their first rookie show at the Olympia, they're really not a factor. They're just kind of happy to be there. But I think you're going to be an impact player at your first time out there. How does it feel to be competing against a legend like Kevin Levrone up there?
I never really thought that me and Kevin would be on the same stage together. So Kevin's comeback this year was a total surprise to me because I know he's talked about coming back a few times, and he actually he hasn't done it. But this year it'll be interesting because I wasn't around, in the time that Kevin was in his prime when people would talk about these crazy transformations that he would pull in like 12 weeks. So people would say he looked like an average Joe, and then he was a top 3 Olympian. 14 weeks later. I didn't get to see that with my own eyes. So for me to think that someone can do that is very hard for me to believe and accept. So I'm really going to be surprised. Like I'm more anxious to see what Kevin's going to bring, probably more than anyone else on the stage, because everybody else is, I wouldn't say predictable, but they're going to be big, they're going to be in shape. Kevin, I think he's 51 or 52, and the pictures that I've seen of him, he continues to get better. So it's going to be interesting to see what he shows up like.
Justin, final question. From a size perspective, you're probably one of the biggest guys, if not the biggest guy, who's going to be in that top 6 or top echelon of bodybuilders up on that stage, with the I guess exception of Big Ramy. That's an unknown factor. He's another dark horse. You never know what's going to show up. If Big Ramy shows up in shape, is that a guy that kind of makes you nervous? Because he's a guy who obviously will probably weigh more than you on stage.
If Big Ramy could actually show up in show up with Phil Heath conditioning or Dexter Jackson conditioning, everybody else just go home. Like, it's over. Forget it. Like, I mean, we've not seen it yet. I think he's been a pro since 2012. So he's been 4 years, and he's done, I don't know, like 8 or 9 shows. He shows up at like 85 or 90%. And at 90%, he's still a top 5 guy.
Yeah.
But, if he ever figures it out, I'm 100%, it's bags.
Well, that's a very honest opinion and a very honest answer. And a lot of people.
He's got great lines. Like, there's nothing wrong with the guy's physique.
Right.
I mean, and he's obviously got more mass than anybody else up there, too. The only thing he's missing is conditioning. I mean, he could pose a little bit better, but I mean, shit, he can fix that. And, he could hit up Kenny Wallach and have 2 or 3 sessions, and that's problem solved there.
He kind of reminds me of a big Justin Compton, except he just doesn't have the conditioning level of a Justin Compton, right?
Well, I don't know. I mean, hopefully that'll be the card that I'm playing on him anyways, is the conditioning.
Yeah. Well, best of luck at the Olympia. Hopefully, over the next couple of weeks, we could do some updates with you, and you can give some training and diet updates as to what's going on in your prep. I think people really want to know what Justin Compton's doing. You've been pretty quiet to this point, but if you'd be willing to do that, I'd love to get you back on and have you update us.
Yeah, definitely. Once a week or, twice a week, whatever you feel.
Cool.
We'll give people a little insight of, what's going on and, just the changes I'm making, how things are coming along.
As Sid called this, he called it the Chronicles of Compton. So this is part 1. Stay tuned for part 2 next week. Justin, best of luck in the prep over the next week, and we'll touch base with you next week for a Justin Compton update.
All right. Thank you, Dave.
All right. That'll take us to the end of this episode of the Chronicles of Compton, brought to you by Evogen Nutrition. Visit evogennutrition.com. I'm Dave Palumbo, and we'll see you in a few minutes for Ask Dave.